What if grief isn't a dead end but a doorway? What if the love that tears the chest open after a funeral is not proof of absence, but the body's clumsy way of detecting a presence too vast to fit into ordinary senses? After I laid my wife into the ground, a wayfinder made of braided starlight took me to the places souls gather after they depart. Cities of remembering, fields where first light is harvested, and a hall where every kindness rings forever. This is not a sermon. It is a carpenter's account of what he saw when his heart broke clean through. Subscribe if the question, "Where did they go?" has ever kept the ceiling from letting you sleep. Stay, even if you don't believe in anything you can't hold. This is for hands that work wood and hearts that don't know what to do with their leftover love. Breathe. The story needs a steady listener. Blue Ridge Funeral, Asheville, North Carolina. Saturday, 3:11 p.m. My name is Ethan Hale. I'm 45. I build tables that outlive apologies and rocking chairs that know how to keep secrets. My wife Leah was 42 when cancer didn't kill her so much as it finished the job her body had already decided it was time to stop doing. She was a hospice nurse, which is a way of saying she knew how to sit with endings until they turned into beginnings. We buried her on a Saturday that smelled like rain and hymnals. The mountain light did that thing it does at 3 o'clock, turning every blade of grass into something you could swear was speaking if you just leaned closer. People said the things people say when words have to stand in for hands. She's in a better place. At least she didn't suffer long. God needed another angel. I love them, but God does not recruit nurses because heaven is short-staffed. Leah would have laughed at that. Then she would have held their hands anyway. I held it together until the sound of dirt on wood. If you know, you know. It is the most honest noise on earth. It says, the body goes back to the place bodies come from. It does not say anything about souls. That silence is what breaks you. That night, I drove up to the parkway to the overlook where Leah and I used to eat peaches in the back of the truck and let juice run down our wrists without wiping it because sometimes it's holy to be sticky. I parked. I killed the lights. The mountains lay like sleeping animals under a sky that looked too crowded to be alone. "Where did you go?" I asked out loud, to a woman who was more patient than anyone I have ever known, and still, I wanted an answer faster than the sky could find it. Something shifted in the truck like air doing a trick. The temperature moved half an inch to the left. The radio, off, hummed the exact pitch of a refrigerator at 2 a.m. A figure stood by the passenger door where a figure should not be, unless you are having the kind of night that makes you believe in things you would normally rule out as weather. They were tall, 7 feet if it matters, in a world where nothing has to fit inside a tape measure. Not a man, not a woman, a braided thing, starlight and river water and the smell of cedar curls in a woodshop, where a face should be, a weave of light that made you feel seen in a way mirrors can't manage. "I am Seraphil," the figure said without sound. Hearing is a generous term for what happens when meaning arrives whole in your chest. "Wayfinder." "I am a man who just buried his wife," I said, which was the most honest introduction I have ever given. "Love asks for direction when the map burns," Seraphil said, "and you are standing where the road splits. Ask the question you meant behind your question." I gripped the wheel not because I was afraid, but because hands like to have something to do while the heart is learning. "Where do souls go?" I said. Not the part of us that doctors can measure, the part that laughed while she was dying and steadied my breath just by sitting in the doorway. "Where did that go?" "Come," Seraphil said. "You are not leaving your body. You are expanding your view." The windshield fogged from the inside and cleared into something that was not glass. The truck stayed where trucks stay. I did not. We moved without moving. Threshold. The first place wasn't a place. It was a quiet that had shape. Imagine the hush that falls in a chapel when someone finally stops apologizing for crying. Now give it a color, like the inside of a pearl. It gathered itself into a river, not water, a current of noticing, a stream of attention running from everywhere to everywhere. Souls entered like swimmers who suddenly remember they invented swimming. River of Quiet. Seraphil named it as if the river had named itself, and made Seraphil promise to introduce it properly. Most arrive here, not because this is the start, but because quiet is the first thing the newly expanded can bear. I wanted to look for Leah the way you scan an airport for the one face that will make a crowd into a room. Seraphil slowed my wanting the way you slow a child at a museum, gently, knowing if you rush the first room, you will miss the curator's trick. Here, the Wayfinder gestured, not with hands but with attention, and a shape approached. Not a person yet, more like a melody that knows the lyrics are on their way. I felt it before I saw it, the precise pressure on my chest, where Leah used to fall asleep with one knee crooked over my thigh and a hand tucked under my shoulder like a bookmark. That feeling has an identity the way cardamom has an identity. You know it, or you don't. Leah, I said, and the melody bloomed into a person. Not as she was in the hospice bed, hollowed, luminous, bones doing too much of the work skin should do. As she was the night she got her nursing pin, hair in a braid, she said made her look like a girl, eyes reflecting every lamp in the auditorium as if light was trying to get back to itself. You came, she said, smiling with her whole face, which was her way of telling the world she would forgive it eventually. I didn't know if I could, I said, which was my way of admitting that grief had made me superstitious in a hurry. You didn't come, she said, brushing my cheek with a hand I felt like warmth through a window. You widened. Field of First Light Seraphil, patient as a trail marker, leaned their presence into the next place and we were there. Fields, not wheat, not grass. A crop that looked like light had learned to grow into lengths and whisper against itself. Souls waded waist deep, laughing with the relief of remembering what it feels like to be without edges. What is this? I asked, because carpenters like to name woods and places both. First light, Seraphil said, where souls harvest the capacity to begin. Those who spent a lifetime ending things, jobs, marriages, cycles, come here to remember the taste of the beginning in their mouths. Leah reached out and cupped a stalk of light as if she were picking blueberries on a July morning. It dissolved into her and did not make her more bright as I expected. It made her more here. We gathered this for the living, she said, before every night shift, before every hard conversation, before every bath I gave a woman who didn't want to be touched but wanted to be clean. We gather it now to help the ones who are still learning to begin again, in a world that ends for them every hour. You're working? I asked, half laughing at the idea of a cosmic to-do list. Work is the wrong word, she said. Call it purpose without friction. Call it being pointed in the direction your soul would have chosen if you'd known how to listen every time. How long do you stay? I asked. How long before you... I don't know. Move on. Time is different here, Seraphil said gently. Your clocks measure change by decay and rotation. Here, change is measured by integration. You stay until you remember enough to want the next thing. Hall of Echoes. The next place was a sound. Imagine a cathedral built of held notes. No walls, just resonance. Every kindness ever done without witness was here, still ringing. Every apology made in a kitchen when nobody else was home. Every breath counted beside a bed by a nurse whose name the family never learned. Every time a man changed the water in a vase 2 days longer than grief told him to. This is where you hear who you are without your resume, Seraphil said. All the small things you thought disappeared when they fell quiet. Nothing falls quiet here, it becomes music. You listen until you know the score by heart. Do we hear the harm? I asked, because truth is a better comfort than any amount of pretending. Yes, Seraphil said, but not as scolding, as consequence. You feel the bruise you left and the hand you could have used instead. Shame does not survive here. Only understanding does. I heard Leah's laugh from 1,000 rooms at once. I heard the way she used to say hey there to patients who didn't have names left because illness had edited their lives down to symptoms. I heard my own voice telling a kid at Lowe's that the cheaper stain would do just fine and teaching him, on the spot, how to sand in circles so the grain gets a say. It kept ringing that moment I had forgotten, and I cried because I didn't know anyone was keeping it. Orchard of unfinished goodbyes. We walked, moved, noticed, became, words behave poorly here, into an orchard. Trees without species, all of them bearing fruit that glowed like lamps someone hung on purpose. Souls wandered the rows, picking fruit and bringing them to their chests where they sank in like medicine, knowing where to go. Unfinished goodbyes, Seraphiel said. Here you can finish what couldn't be done in time. Letters that missed funerals, words that got stuck in throats, gifts that didn't get wrapped because bodies stopped before fingers could. You give and you receive. Balance returns without keeping score. Leah reached up and plucked a fruit that pulsed the exact rhythm of our dog's tail thumping the wall. For Rosie, she said, and then laughing. For you too. She sleeps on your side now because it smells like your done days. Put this under your pillow when you go home. You'll dream what you need to say. I wanted to ask how to bring fruit across. Seraphiel answered before I formed the question. Ritual is the bridge, they said. Write, burn, bury, bake, speak. That's all magic is. Agreement with meaning. City of remembering. I didn't expect a city. Gates and street vendors and, forgive me, pigeons that looked like thoughts that hadn't landed yet. Buildings made of reflections, each one showing a different angle of the same truth. A square where souls gathered around a fountain whose water ran up. This is where the we, Seraphiel said. You remember you're not just you. You're your grandmother's laugh, your father's patience with small engines, your neighbor's soup recipe, your hometown's marching band. Identity widens until it becomes community, and then it becomes belonging without borders. Do people stay here? I asked, dizzy with the comfort of a crowd that didn't require you to perform to deserve your seat. Some do, Seraphiel said, especially the ones who are lonely. Not because loneliness survives, but because the cure is an art, and they are artists now. We sat on the edge of the fountain. Water made a sound like it was learning to speak. Leah leaned her shoulder into mine. It felt like a truth I didn't know was still allowed. What about heaven and hell, I asked, because I was raised in a church where those were the only two maps on the wall. Heaven is a word for places like these, Seraphiel said. Hell is a word for what happens when a soul refuses to integrate. There are hospitals here too, places where the stubborn are allowed to rest until the part that clings unclenches. No one is thrown anywhere. Everyone is met. Life review, but different than you think. We did not walk into a courtroom. We walked into a workshop. Benches, tools, a piece of wood on mine that looked suspiciously like the walnut slab I had been avoiding because it reminded me of Leah's hair when she was 20. On Leah's, linens and a basin. She grinned. Of course she gets a basin in a cosmic workshop. A panel rose from the table surface like a memory obeying gravity. My life. Not as a movie, as raw material. Moments I could pick up, sand, join, learn from, without bleeding shame all over the floor. You see it all, Seraphiel said, from your point of view and from theirs, not to punish, to understand. You fix nothing here. You practice the motion, so when you choose to try again in a body, the motion is in your muscles. Leah watched her last year with a tenderness that made me think maybe strength is just tenderness with a good memory. She touched the day she snapped at me because the pain was a wall she hadn't learned how to walk through yet. She touched the apology. She touched the night she taught a new nurse how to speak to a dying man who was afraid his breath was a bad smell. You told him it smells like a baby learning to blow out candles, she said to that younger nurse version of herself. And the room laughed the way rooms do when truth wears a joke to make itself easier to carry. Do you go back? I asked. The door we all pretend we don't see even when we have our hand on its knob. Some do, Seraphiel said. Some guide, some rest, some study. You do not reincarnate because you failed. You return because you love practicing. Will you? I asked Leah, bracing for an answer I didn't have a category for. Not yet, she said. I promised the ones at my hospice I'd sit at the foot of their beds when their wives go home at midnight to shower. I promised Rosie I'd chase the thing she dreams about that makes her feet twitch. I promised you I'd be a draft under the door when you forget to open the shop windows and wonder why the stain is making you dizzy. When those promises feel like rituals instead of rescue, I'll think about more hands. Proof for the living brain. Ethan, Seraphiel said, when you go home you will need anchors. The human mind believes better when it can touch. They showed me 3. A floorboard in our bedroom, 3rd from the wall, 6 feet from the headboard. Lift it. A ring. Leah's wedding band, the one she took off when her fingers swelled and said, I'll wear it again when the steroids are over. And then never did. She had hidden it there because she wanted to surprise me on our 20th with a new engraving. Still choosing, she had planned to carve inside. Second, her phone, voice memos, a file with a date 2 days before she died. For Ethan, she had recorded in a voice underwater with morphine. The phrase she said next was one I heard at the river, not a Bible verse, not a quote, a thing she used to say in line at coffee when a stranger looked too tired. Lean on me means I lean back. Third, a drawing in the drawer of the hospice art cart. A man named Mr. Dwyer had drawn it the week before he went soft, a skyline that matched the city of remembering right down to the fountain that runs up. He had never left Buncombe County. He had never used a straight edge that steady. He titled it elsewhere, Return. We were back at the Overlook with the abruptness of a door opened onto weather. My hands were on the wheel. The radio was still doing its refrigerator hum. Seraphil stood outside the truck, like the kind of problem that isn't one if you don't argue with it. I don't want to leave her, I said. Honesty kept riding shotgun all night and was not getting out now. You can't, Seraphil said. Leaving and staying are categories that don't apply to what you are now. You will not move on. You will move with. How do I talk to her? I asked. Without tricks. Without pretending. Ritual, they said. Kitchens are good. Woodshops too. Light a small thing. Burn a small thing. Stir, sand, speak, listen. Do not ask for signs like a banker asks for collateral. Notice like a man who knows which tree makes which smell when he cuts into it. Will I see you again? I asked, because humans love to make appointments with the uncalendarable. When you widen, Seraphil said, and then they were not there, and the air went back to pretending it was ordinary. Anchors, back home. I lifted the floorboard, third from the wall, 6 feet from the headboard. The ring waited like it hadn't been waiting so much as proving it could. I cried in a sound that made Rosie come from under the bed and put her chin on my knee like she had been trained in a place with fields of first light. Inside the band, nothing. I took it to the jeweler and asked him to engrave what Leah had planned. Still choosing, I said. He nodded like he did not need my context. Her phone, voice memos. For Ethan, the file said. Her voice smudged but hers. If I forget to say it, she said, lean on me means I lean back. I sat on the edge of the bed and said out loud to a woman who understood semantics better than most theologians, I will. The hospice, art cart. Mr. Dwyer's drawing labeled in clean block letters, elsewhere. The skyline was the right kind of wrong. Angles physics doesn't allow, but that memory does. The fountain ran up. I took a photo. I told the charge nurse the art program was the best medicine on the floor and brought a box of Prismacolors with a note from Leah's carpenter. What I tell the living now. Grief is not love's opposite. It is love's ache when it loses the weight it used to bench press every morning. Give it something to lift. Ritual is weight. Cake baked on their birthday becomes a dumbbell. Reading their favorite poem becomes a kettlebell. Your chest will get stronger. Souls go to places of purpose. Some gather first light for us. Some sit in halls where echoes teach them who they are. Some finish goodbyes in orchards and send the fruit back as dreams. Some build cities out of belonging. If your person was a maker, they are making. If they were a sitter with, they are sitting. Purpose without friction. Ask for anchors. Then do the work of noticing. You will not get a billboard. You will get a ring under a floorboard, a phrase on a memo, a drawing in a drawer. Meet your proof halfway. That is what faith looks like in a body that respects evidence. Love reroutes, it does not end. It learns new roads to the same house. You don't have to move on. You move with, which is why some days your grief feels heavy. You are carrying. Ask the ones who harvest first light to send some to your ribs, the departed mentor, the living. If your person taught, they are teaching. If they fixed engines, they are whispering torque specs you pretend you remembered. If they mothered, they are the draft that keeps the pie from cracking. Ask them like you used to, expect them like you forgot you were allowed to. What I did with the rest of my life so far. I started opening the shop windows even in winter because air is a theology. I wear the ring on a chain when my hands are too swollen from planing maple to wear it on a finger. I go to the hospice on Thursdays and fix the wheels on the art cart. I built a bench for the orchard that exists in a place I can't drive to, so I put it under the sugar maple at the hospice garden and carved into it, "Elsewhere has room." Once a month, I sit with other men who have the dirt on wood sound in their chests. We make things. One guy whittles fish, one sands crib rails he never got to use. We don't talk about feelings until the wood tells us to. Then we do, without apologizing for tears, because shame has a hard time climbing over shavings. On Leah's birthday, I bake a cake and ruin the frosting and bring it to the nurses and say, "She would have done this better." And they say, "She taught us enough," which is how heaven sounds on a Tuesday. If you need a map tonight, find a small object that belongs to them. Put it under your pillow. Dream. Write the first sentence you remember before you pee. Do not edit it. Read it tomorrow. It will be fruit you didn't know you picked. Go to the room where they were, most themselves. Do one thing they loved half as well as they did it. Wash a dish the way they washed. Sweep like they swept. Talk out loud like you're mic'd to a frequency you can't hear yet. Listen to the silence grow shape. Light a candle. Say their name. Say, "Still choosing." See how your lungs answer. Breath is a call and response instrument. Ask for a small anchor. Specify. "If you are near, let me find the penny on the sill I swear I didn't put there," is not bargaining. It is learning to read the alphabet of presence. When it shows up, do not ruin the miracle by explaining it to death. Nod. Say thanks. Keep moving with. The hook you came for. After I buried my wife, a wayfinder made of braided starlight showed me where souls go when they depart. They go to quiet rivers and fields where beginnings are grown. They go to halls where every kindness rings forever, and orchards where unfinished goodbyes ripen sweet. They go to cities built of belonging, where loneliness becomes an art someone teaches to the next person who forgets they were never actually alone. They go exactly where their purpose can keep breathing, and they do not go without finding a way to lean back when we lean. Drop your anchors in the comments, the ones that embarrassed you when you tried to tell a friend who believes only in what fits in a socket set, the voice memo, the ring, the drawing. The dog who barked at an empty doorway and wagged like a person just walked in. Someone reading this needs your proof to ask for their own. Subscribe if you need more maps. Not because I know the whole country beyond the seam, because I know enough trailheads and I carry first light in a thermos. Remember, grief is love learning a new route. Follow it. It knows where she went. It will take you as far as you need to widen.